very big show for you today. Big show. I'm excited. Big, big show. I like Brendan Schaub. And you guys can roast me in the comment section. I know. That's not the most popular take. I like the guy. I think he's funny. I'm not gonna sing his praises here because you guys just roast me more. Okay, I get it. All right. I like Brendan Schaub and I like Joe Rogan, but they're absolutely wrong about several things. We're gonna get into all of that. In fact, Brendan Schaub is super wrong about the Netflix MVP card that just happened, Jake Paul's MMA promotion. Joe's super wrong about Theo Vaughn. So we're going to get into all of that. Let me check the chat real quick. I see you guys hopping on the chat already. Shout out to my real ones in the chat. John Hogan says, hey, what's up, everyone? Listen, man, I got this whole freaking thing going on, guys. All right, so first things first, before we get started, shout out to Fight Circus, home of the Freak Show fights. I'm actually going to be giving this away, this shirt soon. I'm going to start doing giveaways on here. I got to figure out what are the requirements? You got to be subscribed, right? You got to like the videos, drop chats, drop comments, something. So I'm giving that away first. And then also, guys, if you're a real one, and only if you're a real one, I made real one shirts for you guys. So shout out to all my real ones out there, the people that subscribe and support the channel, man. That means a lot to me. All right. So we got Aubrey Gordon, King Dave. How do you feel about Kobe retiring? Yeah, I'm curious as to why he actually retired and if that is legitimate or not, or if he is just, I don't know, man. He seems like he's upset about the UFC White House card, not having him on. I'm sure they're not offering him the best fights. The more outspoken he becomes, they're probably offering him worse and worse fights for less and less money. I'm sure he has a contract that will pay him X, but in order to receive X, he wants to fight Y opponent, and Y opponent is not being offered to him. He's getting Z opponent, which is way different than what he probably feels he should be paid to fight that opponent. For example, I've heard that they offered him Bo Nickel at the White House, which means he would have to move up weight classes and fight a guy who's a bad stylistic matchup for him that has nothing to do with his weight class or him moving forward towards any form of title. Probably doesn't want that fight, so if they're offering him fights like that, he's probably like, hey, fuck it, man. I'm just going to retire, man. These people are cat dicking me. He probably feels like he's getting cat dicked. Anyways, so tonight we're going to get into all the Brendan Schaub and Joe Rogan controversy that's going on right now. I'm your host for the evening. My name is King David MMA. I don't know why I'm rocking a bare knuckle shirt. Felony Charles Bennett keeps telling me I should fight in bare knuckle. He thinks I'll do well. But I am a pro MMA champion, a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. And I coach at the world's greatest gym, Extreme Couture, guys. All right. Oh, speaking of which, I'm also Hulk Hogan's nephew. I took down the video that I posted about the Hulk Hogan documentary episode 4 review. And what I realized was that I took it down because I didn't like the energy of it all, but a lot of that had to do with the thumbnail that I created. So I changed the thumbnail and I sent the video to public again. So if you guys want to see my review of episode 4 of my uncle's documentary on Netflix, RIP, Hulk Hogan, Real American, I watched episode 4. It was brutal, and I have made that video public again. So for everyone that was in the Hulk Hogan space, that video's back live, and I feel better about it now that I have a different thumbnail on it. So I have a very direct thumbnail instead of trying to get clickbaity with the thumbnails. Why don't they put him on the White House card? Bro, they should put Kobe Covington on the White House card. That's, to me, is a no-brainer. But the thing about the UFC is they're going to UFC. They're going to do what they do, which is like, hey, man, unless there's some really special circumstances, they seem to not do anybody any favors no matter what has happened, right? So, even with this Conor McGregor fight coming back, he could have fought Chandler. He probably would have cut through Michael Chandler like a knife through butter. You know what I mean? Broke his nose, KO'd him stiff, right? Instead of giving Max Holloway. That's a tough fight, right? They're even their biggest star, they're not doing a favor to, right? That's not what the UFC does. So as cool as Kobe tried to be to the UFC, tried to be a company man, he was the first person to ever bring a UFC belt to the White House, and they don't put him on the White House card. Dude, I can see why the guy retired after that, man. It's wild. I would have liked to see him on the White House card. I wanted to see all Americans on the White House card and just beating people up. I wanted a 100% win rate for Americans on the White House card, but I'm a different type of guy. You know what I mean? I like F-16s with red, white, and blue smoke coming out the back. I like the American flags getting raised. I like people holding up UFC belts with the White House in the background representing America. Conor versus Kobe would have been nice on the White House card. Would have been tight. Yeah, man, that would have been a great one. I feel like that would have that might have been the better actual that might have been the better fight, dude. Kobe versus that would have been crazy because they both would have talked shit. They would have hyped the fight. And then I'll be real, man. I think Conor McGregor beats Kobe Covington. Even though people say Conor can't wrestle, Conor stopped, slowed down a lot of Khabib's initial takedown attempts. He did better in the grappling and not taking damage than a lot of people have done. Conor, when he is prepared to wrestle, can wrestle not at like the world class elite level, but he can counter wrestle, he can stuff shots. He did well. I mean, and then he survived against Chad Mendes when Chad Mendes took him down. He got up and KO'd him stiff, just like he said he would do. I think Conor would have survived the takedowns from Kobe, and it might have looked like Conor versus Eddie Alvarez. Maybe Conor wouldn't have been as precise, you know, because he's probably going to be a little bigger in that fight. So probably has a little bit more power, a little less free and flowy precision. But that fight could have looked a lot like that. That would be interesting. I would have loved to see that fight. That's a great fight. Dude, bro. Now you got me sad, man. Now, because we're never going to see that fight. Dude, that would have been a great. There's so many great fights they can make, man. There's so many great fights. Dude, I want to see all the great fights. I'm into it. Arpon the Don just got here. What's up, Art? John Hogan, I would love to go to the White House card and see it live. How could you get that invite? I heard your boy Donald Trump has 1,000 tickets. He's giving them away mostly to military. So, man, you might have to sign up for the draft, bruh. You might have to sign up for the draft. So let's get right into it, guys. If you've not already subscribed, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you have notifications on. For example, tonight we're going live what are we doing? Like, we started probably 30 minutes earlier than usual. I'm pushing it earlier and earlier. So make sure you have notifications on. It's very important. Also, guys, make sure you check out the merch store we got up. I'm going to redo the whole merch store. I don't like the way it looks. If you guys have feedback on that, go ahead and let me know about that. And man, I'm gonna give you guys a take, and I know I'm gonna get roasted in the comments because every time I mention this dude's name, I get people blast me in the comments. I pause. Like Brendan Schaub. Big pause. I like the guy. Go ahead and roast me. Okay. I like the dude. Now, there's a lot of stuff about the guy I don't know. I'm learning as people comment more and more. They're dropping a lot of facts about the dude that I didn't know. I didn't know he was suing other channels, and I didn't know any of that. But from my experience watching the pod, seeing him on Joe Rogan, watching his fights back when he was on the Ultimate Fighter, you know, with my teammate Roy Nelson back in the day, he was on there with Kimbo Slice. You know what I mean? But maybe I'm too positive, guys. Maybe I'm too uh naive. You know, some people would say that. But I like Brendan Schaub and I like Joe Rogan, but they're both wrong. We're going to get into it. Arp on the Don is saying more caffeine. Bro, I agree. I agree. I started today off with 450 milligram energy drinks straight to the head. Just start the day. Boom, 600. Right off the jump. And then I've been down on these ever since. These have 34 milligrams each. I don't even know how many of these I've drank. So, anyways, we're well into the 700 somewhere. I would imagine it, if not. Who knows, right? Could be more, could be less. I don't like to overhype it. I like to maybe underestimate it. But anyways, so Brendan Schaub is absolutely wrong, and so is Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan, I don't believe it was intentional, but he threw Theo Vaughn under the bus. He started talking about how Theo Vaughn is talking about ending himself, and he's on medications and all this stuff. And I would hope Theo would get off the meds. I am not a doctor, but I don't believe in meds like that. I know, controversial take, right? I believe that you can do breath work and change your brain chemistry. I believe you can work out, you can exercise, you can get endorphins, you can focus on the positive, you can focus on the progress you've made in life, you can look how far you've come, you can get into gratitude. I believe that you have a primal state which can keep you like tense, like cortisol, like 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 adrenaline, you know what I mean? And then you have a more gratitude oriented state, which is like calm and vibey, you know? And if you can keep yourself in a calm and vibey state, then it's kind of hard to be depressed. And people are going to fire back and they're going to say the depression is real, all that stuff, right? Listen, I'm not a doctor. I don't believe in that. I don't believe in it at all. I believe you like there are some mental problems out there that like some people really see shit and fucking all that, right? But for the average person, like they told me I was depressed when I was a kid. Well, dude, yeah, school sucked and I was like being forced to go. You know what I mean? I was someone who felt I should be a sovereign entity at like 12 years old and I'm getting forced to go to school and I didn't like school. You know what I mean? Recess was fun. I liked lunch, but other than that, like most of it was like sit down and shut up and I wasn't into that. So of course I'm gonna show signs of depression. It's like, dude, what's there to look forward to? School sucks, right? And that's a whole other subject. But as we mature, we realize that we're in control of a lot of this. I believe, as a non-medical professional, don't take my medical advice for anything ever. Don't drink 1,000 milligrams of caffeine a day. Don't do that. I'm telling you not to do that, right? Like, talk to your doctor. Do whatever they say, right? Because we live in a country, at least I do. I live in America where no matter what experience you've had in life, you got to listen to the guy who read in a book about something that they've never gone through themselves, you know? So, do that. Listen to the people who sit on the sidelines and read books about things. But yeah, so I believe that Joe Rogan was trying to help Theo and was trying to like bring up the subject of quote unquote men's mental health and mental health in general and how we have a prescription medication problem in America and bring awareness to that. I think Joe had good intentions, but I think like calling Theo out by name, is probably not good. And I also think that in a lot of ways, like if you put yourself in Theo's shoes, right? Like everybody's trying to talk about what they think is best for Theo, you know? But like, what about believing Theo is competent? What about believing Theo's gonna figure it out? What about thinking Theo is like an infinite, universal creation of an all loving God and universe above, and like he can do anything he sets his mind to? What about believing in the guy? You know what I mean? Instead of like thinking you gotta you know what I mean? So that's where I disagree with him doing that. And then Brendan Schaub's whole wrongness was based on his Netflix take because I believe the Netflix card served an audience that was not being served, which is the casual fan. Where else can the casual fan go for essentially free if they already have a Netflix account and watch names they recognize fight in action packed fights, right? That aren't as technically sound to the point where a casual fan would believe they're boring. Where can a casual fan go, right? Where can a casual fan go for that? Where can a casual fan go to see Mike Perry bust Nate Diaz's head open, right? Netflix. And they go to Netflix. So Brendan Schaub, he accused Jake Paul of fixing a fight. he said that he believes the Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight was fixed. I believe even if Brendan thinks that, as someone who has sued people, Brendan has sued people based on the comments that you guys have left, that I've read, because I read all the comments and I respond to almost every single person who comments. The channel's getting bigger now. So it's becoming more and more challenging to respond to every single person. But if someone like drops a genuine comment, I'm still in a place where I can respond. So if you leave a genuine comment with like an intelligent take, dude, I'm writing back at this point in time. I won't be able to in the future, but right now I can. Right. So as someone who has sued other channels, Brandon Schaub, you would think would be more aware of defamation of Jake Paul, and I don't think Jake's going to sue him, and I don't think Jake should sue him. I think the controversy is good for Jake. And I think Brendan really believes that the Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight was fixed, right? I don't believe that's like a federal crime, guys. You think Jake Paul's committing a federal crime? Now, did Mike Tyson pull punches? Right? Well, what's that got to do with Jake Paul? Jake Paul could go in there with the intent of winning a fight and not even know that Tyson's pulling punches. So if anything, people would say that because Tyson was pulling punches, maybe Tyson fixed. But like, I don't believe that either, because the clip I saw as a martial arts expert, it looked like Tyson went to fire something, realized Jake Paul was out of range, and then didn't throw the punch. And to someone who is untrained, it may look like, oh, he pulled a punch. Well, dude, if he's trying to conserve his energy, because the dude's 60, right? He's not going to throw punches he knows are going to miss. So that's what I saw when I watched it. So I thought Brendan Schaub was wrong about that. He says Netflix has no future plans. Dude, they set the U.S. viewership record for an MMA event. They got 17 million views worldwide, just under 17 million at peak, right? So in the Ronda Rousey versus Gina Carano fight, they got as many as like 16.9 million people watching. Then Netflix is going to do another MMA event, guys. That's just what it is. So Schaub can say they don't have a plan, that they're not the UFC, that they're not building fighters. Dude, yesterday's live, I talked about you got to know what game you're in, right? I see this all the time. This is why I've said that I don't believe in politics. And people go, not having a political take is having a political take. And that's a common comment that I would get when I say, dude, politics are just or clavicular's right. But it's because a lot of people don't know the game they're operating in. The game is, I'm not going to talk about the political game, but it's got a lot to do with donors and people telling the public one thing and then doing what they're getting paid to do, whatever, right? Like, it's not the game as it's presented to the public. Same thing with this. This isn't Netflix trying to be the best two fighters on the planet versus the best two fighters on the planet in a technical battle, a human chess match. No, dude, this is a spectacle. This is getting people who people care about to fight each other on a platform that people can easily watch. The strategy that I would believe Netflix would have, being that I'm Hulk Hogan's nephew and I understand how the entertainment business works, is Netflix would most likely start with, let's say, 4 cards a year. Now, King David, why would you say 4 cards a year? Well, dude, because there's 4 quarters in a business year. So if they were going to release reports on their viewership numbers or their subscriber numbers or their retention rate of how long someone stays a subscriber on average, wouldn't it make sense that either right near the end of the quarter to boost the numbers or right at the beginning of the next quarter so that people from the last quarter stay till the next quarter, that they have some big freaking spectacle that gets 17 million views, 20 million views, gets everybody talking and watching so that they can extend their average retention rate one more month. As a business platform, they might be in the business of creating a spectacle that would help them do that. Okay, maybe I'm nuts, right? But Brendan Schaub says that they got no plans. So, okay, oh, dude, they're not the UFC, bro. Come on, dog. That you think that's what they're? Do you really think that's what they're doing, Brendan, bro? I like you, dog. You know that's not what they're doing, bro. You know that. Oh man, he said he accused fans of getting duped, of getting faked out, of getting the rug pulled over their eyes because he feels that people thought that Ronda and Gina was going to be competitive. And some people may have thought that, but that's the difference between someone who is not super familiar with those two ladies and someone who is, right? So the part that I didn't like about Ronda and Gina was that there was no beef. There was no reason for them to fight. There was no consequence. There was no risk. There was no reward. It was just two ladies who appear to be friendly are going to have a fight, which by all expert accounts won't be competitive at all. And then they're going to stay friends after. Ronda even got on the mic and said she's buying a fucking multi-million dollar house in Hawaii. So she's happy. And Gina's smiling after losing. So what are we doing here? Why did they fight? Now, I don't think that anybody got tricked into anything, but because they were very friendly the whole lead up. So it kind of like plays into like, dude, they weren't really taking the fight as if there were dire consequences. I also feel like Ronda should fight someone of significance in terms of fighting skill moving forward. She should get one more in there and fight somebody where there's a risk of Ronda losing. And if Ronda were to beat that person, let's say a Holly Holm rematch and win, well, now she can ride off into the sunset. Beating Gina Carano is just kind of like, everybody loves Gina, man. But like, come on, dog. That's okay. Anyways, good for Ronda. She got paid. Good for Gina. She got paid. Brendan Schaub also said that Netflix didn't pay well, which is cap. I know people on the card. They made more money in this fight than they've made in any fight they've ever done, and they were allowed to get sponsors. So between the money they made and the sponsors, they're making way more money. And just because Netflix didn't report that their main event made, $10 million each, doesn't mean that for the average fighter on the card, they made more money fighting on Netflix than they could have fighting somewhere else because they understand what offers they're getting and Netflix is offering more money. Therefore, that's more money and that's a good thing. Now, Brendan's point is that the triple main events didn't make as much as, other main events or that they may have made previously, which this is the thing, right? The fighter pay issue comes down to this. People want the UFC to pay a competitive percentage in relation to other major sports like the NFL, NBA, MLB, which pay about 50% of their money to the fight, to the sports, to the players, to the athletes. Now, if UFC did that, that would mean like $3-4 billion is going to payroll over the next 7 years, which would be excellent for fighters. Now, Netflix may have not paid dollar for dollar as much as the UFC for, let's say, a Conor McGregor fight or Strickland versus Alex Pereira. Although I believe they did. I believe they paid as much, if not more. I believe the fighters made more than was indicated by the Netflix report because I know for a fact Ronda Rousey got paid as a fighter and as a promoter. Now, if everybody on the card got that same type of pay structure, then the reported pay for fighting will be less than the total pay that fighter received because they got a fight pay and they got a promotion pay. But nobody's talking about that because nobody knows that's what's going on. So anyways, he's saying that Netflix didn't pay well. But the thing is that let's say Netflix didn't generate as much money as the UFC did on X event. So the latest UFC, Strickland versus Hamzat, the Netflix card, right? Which one made more money? UFC paid out whatever 17 or 19% of their profits to the fighters. Netflix made less money but paid out 55% or 80% to the fighters. That's a better business model moving forward to operate within as they start generating more and more revenue. Because if 80% is going to the fucking fighters and they start making as much as the UFC, well, then they're like 5 timesing what the UFC is paying out. So although they're still competitive, even though they're not making as much money, they're still paying out as much, if not more. Then like, how could you possibly say that they're not paying well? Doesn't make any sense. Also, here's a take for you guys. Brendan Schaub says Jake Paul will beat Nate Diaz or Mike Perry in MMA. What do you guys think of that? Here, let me read the chat real quick. I got a couple more of these, right? Yeah. So, anyways, but how can he, if we have the freedom of speech, what a snowflake? Oh, yeah. So how can he sue? Yeah, yeah. So you can make a case that if someone is saying something publicly that they know to be untrue about you and it is affecting your ability to generate money, then they owe you money, right? So they are allowed to say things publicly, but they cannot hurt you financially, financially in a public sphere, right? So that, and here's the thing. This is the thing. How can they sue? Well, because lawyers get paid. So lawyers are going to sue, right? If they think they can make money, they're going to sue, free speech or not, right? All right. And Netflix is legit. It's going to be entertaining. Yeah, man. So we're moving forward into a great era. We're moving forward to a big fight era. I believe they're going to try and do something crazy. I'm not saying this is going to be the exact fight, but like Francis Ngannou versus Brock Lesnar, right? Oh my gosh, that fight's not real martial arts. That's not competitive, bro. That fight will break records. All right. So also, Brendan Schaub got into why Ariel Helwani talks so much, and he's saying that he had the production team in his ear telling him to stretch it out, which is true. That part's true. But the senior reason to why that happened is because the Netflix card was promoted by people who've done boxing promotions. And in boxing, there's an A side and a B side, and it's very clear who's being brought in to win and who's being brought in to lose. Boxing is very big on mismatches and predictable outcomes so that they can start to build fighters in a certain way. That's why you see guys never fighting each other until they're 22-0 versus 21-0 in boxing. But their combined opponents' records are 17 and 189, right? So how did they get to 22-0 each? But they've only fought losing record fighters, right? And they've never crossed paths until boxing can make money on it. So the boxing business model is having an A side that's here to beat up the B side. And the Netflix card essentially had that because not a single underdog, not one, 0 underdogs on the Netflix card won. 100% of the favorites who were scheduled to win won. So moving forward, they may want to address that because if that's how it's going to go every single event, well, then it's going to be too predictable. We need some. We need some lack of certain. Like I gotta watch. I want to know who's gonna win because I don't know who's gonna win. If you already know who's gonna win, then it's kind of like, okay, well, we already know where these fights are going to go, right? So that is one critique of the Netflix card is that 0 of the underdogs won. Also, the French KSW champion was his name, Saladin. And Brendan Shaw was talking about him, how he needs to get released from Netflix. They need to let him go so that he can go fight in the UFC. And then he said that Saladin should have been signed to the UFC already, but UFC didn't want to pay him. So now you're saying Netflix didn't pay well, but UFC doesn't pay well, but he should get released so he can go fight in the UFC, but the UFC won't make him an offer because he wants too much. Like, so what are we talking about, right? And Saladin, I believe, could fight in the top 10 in the UFC today. The way he dropped my friend Kenny Cross, who is fucking excellent. Kenny is excellent, guys. Kenny would win fights in the top 15 and top 10 in the UFC today. And Saladin got him out of there. Man, that was fucking crazy, right? So, dude, I'd like to see Kenny Cross versus Nate Diaz. I believe Kenny Cross beats Nate Diaz. How about that? But anyways, we're talking to undercard. We're getting into the weeds here. Also, it's alleged by Brendan Schaub this is worst ticket sales ever in that venue. And the reason why I believe the ticket sales didn't pop off, even though they got 17 million viewers on Netflix, is because the barrier to entry. So Rhonda and Gina could be like a cool nostalgia moment. Two big names, casual fans, right? But a casual fan's not going to buy a fucking ticket. They're not going to shell out 88 bucks to go sit in the cheap seats, sit through a bunch of fucking MMA fights that they have no interest in just to see Rhonda and Gina. But they will tap on it on Netflix because that is much easier than getting their happy ass up and driving to a venue in LA traffic, right? So Netflix should have done more of like a meet and greet style thing. They should have paid Nate. They should have had Nate at certain locations where he'll sign some shit if you got a ticket, right? Or something like that. Like you can buy tickets and then Nate will sign your merch or some shit. They could have done things like that to spread awareness to sell more tickets. Even if they would have sold a couple thousand more tickets, that place would have looked more packed. But like actual grassroots, like get out there and make it fucking happen. Because in order to get somebody to part with money is a much higher barrier to entry than just getting them to watch on Netflix. So even though the Netflix and the social media trends were trending in the right direction, people talking about Nate, people talking about Rhonda on social media, people talking about Mike Perry, people talking about Francis, those don't indicate ticket sales. Ticket sales are a different animal. Okay. And to get people to buy tickets, they got to be emotionally invested. And by telling them, Rhonda and Gina, hey, there's no reason to watch because we don't care who wins. We're besties, right? They're not going to get up and buy a ticket for that. Who they will buy a ticket for is Nate. But they got to put Nate out there, right? You can't just expect people to pull up, right? You got to like, hey, come meet Nate Diaz. So, something like that. Make it fucking happen. Especially for their first fucking card. They got to go over the top. Come meet the fighters. Maybe do a meet and greet with everybody, or do like 3 days of meet and greets. Meet Nate on day one. Meet Mike Perry on day two, meet Francis on day three, fucking meet Rhonda and Gina on day four, whatever, right? Like, let's put them in front of the venue and sell some fucking tickets, guys. So it's two different business models. I don't think Netflix cares that it didn't sell a bunch of tickets. I don't think MVP really cares, although they probably care more than Netflix does because they probably are financially on the line for that, where Netflix might not be. So, anyway, that's kind of the business model behind what's happening at Netflix. Netflix, I believe, will do at least 4 cards moving forward, and they're going to use it as a way to ensure people stay longer on their platform. They're not probably as interested in, if they get new signups, that'll be great. But again, the barrier to entry, what is it easier to do? To get somebody to stay an extra month before they cancel, right? Hey, we could get them to not cancel, which means they do nothing, right? Or we can get them to sign up, which means they have to do something. So whenever you're thinking about business, it's like, how do we either lower the barrier of entry, or how do we raise what someone's going to get for that barrier of entry to make it easier for them or more valuable for them, MVP, most valuable promotions, to sign up? Does that make sense? Anyway, let me read the chat, guys. Netflix and MVP versus Paramount and UFC. Who you got? Bro, Aubrey, let me ask you this. Who do you got? Who do you got? And what are the metrics we're going by? Are we going by venue ticket sales? Are we going by who watched on a streaming platform? Are we going by who stays in business the longest? Are we going by will the Netflix card, their American streaming record, beat the UFC White House's card streaming record? Like what metrics? Before I can tell you who I got, I need to know what metrics we're judging them by. John Dong says if MVP somehow signed Almeida, what are his chances against Ngannou? Dude, that's a great question. Also, I'm biased. I train at Extreme Couture. Francis Ngannou was the best heavyweight on the planet. He beats everybody. Even when they got John Jones who I would say is borderline in breach of contract for even showing up on the Netflix event and talking about his contract and talking about fights. I would say that that could be considered breach by some lawyer somewhere. And I believe Ngannou beats John Jones. Hot take. I know, guys, it's crazy. I'm not as impressed with John Jones' ability to beat Francis as a lot of people are. I've seen too much in the gym. Francis would KO John Jones. Aubrey Gordon says Netflix because when it comes to global, they're way bigger. Plus MVP can make dream matchups. Yeah, fights that have never happened before in the UFC, like Ronda and Gina. Yeah, exactly. Right. So that's the part that everybody's missing. When I see these commentators, these YouTubers, the podcasters, everybody, shout out to everybody doing their thing, right? But like a lot of people are playing the wrong game. They're trying to go, MVP and Netflix will never beat UFC at UFC's game. It's like, that's not the game they're playing. You got to understand their metrics for success. So exactly what Aubrey's saying, right, is that dream matchups, right? Shit that the UFC will never do. And now, guess what? Because Netflix is doing it, it might prompt the UFC to do a little bit more of it, right? And because the critique on Netflix is that it's just fucking steamroller fights, the A side won every single fight, they're probably going to add a couple more competitive fights, right? And now it's good for everybody because there's competition. This is the first time in a long time the UFC has had any competition. For instance, ONE FC, One Fighting Championship over in Japan, they have MMA fights. Well, they just like fired their whole MMA staff, right? So even the international competition is changing. So this Netflix card, man, I'm saying they're going to do something crazy. If they do Francis versus Brock Lesnar, that's fucking nuts. They're talking about Francis versus the Cuban Taekwondo bronze medalist who just knocked out Junior Dos Santos. They're talking about Jake Paul versus Francis in boxing. I saw them going head to head. There's a new Instagram reel that dropped. It's on Francis Ngannou's Instagram. And he's talking to Jake about, like, bro, are you scared? And then Jake's like, scared of what? And Francis is like, you should be. You should be. And Jake's a madman. Shout out to that guy for boxing Francis. And people can say he wants to beat up like MMA fighters and stuff, dude. He's got his hands full with Francis, especially after Anthony Joshua did him like that, broke his jaw in multiple places. He's had to have multiple surgeries. He got a jaw infection. He had to go back for more, dude. And then to get in there with Francis after that, that's fucking nuts. That dude really must. So I know he did some ayahuasca and some plant medicine. And I believe that Jake is at a point where he doesn't believe that he is solely physical. I believe that Jake believes he's like a spiritual being, which I agree with in a lot of aspects. So he might even think like this life isn't real. So he has no fear because he's like, we're all one, and when we die, we go back to source. So I'm not afraid, right? Which is a crazy place to be in because hey, we're currently in physical bodies, and Jake currently got his jaw broken in multiple places, and he's currently talking shit to Francis, which is wild. King Dave, name one dream fight you want to see in MVP. Bro, fuck it, let's run it up. Let's do some dream matchups. I'd like to see Francis versus Brock Lesnar while we're at it, right? Why not? Who else could we get? Oh, fuck, dude. Well, like that's the thing, right? Kobe's under contract. I wouldn't mind seeing fucking Kobe Covington versus Mike Perry right now. Mike Perry believes that he's one of the best 170-pound MMA fighters on the planet. We'll put him in there with a wrestler like Kobe. If he could stop Kobe, now he's making a case for himself. Who else? Who should we could get Nate Diaz versus Jake Paul in MMA. I think that's an interesting matchup. Jake Paul wrestled. People don't know that he went to like not that he won state, but I think he got as far as like the state tournament in high school in Ohio, which is a wrestling state. So it might be hard for Nate to take him down, but guess what? Nate did judo throw Mike Perry, and Mike Perry might be a little bit more aware of Jake, but Jake can learn, right? So like that's an interesting fight. Jake Paul versus Nate Diaz in MMA. That one's crazy. Jake's a bigger guy. Could Nate do it? I'd like to see Nick Diaz and Nate Diaz on the same card. Could you imagine the Diaz brothers on the same card on Netflix? What about? I know they didn't sign these guys to long-term contracts. What if they go over and box in misfits together? Right? Like we got all kinds of options now. What's another dream fight I would want to see in MVP? I would, dude. Fuck. I'm a psychopath. I'd like to see Gina Carano versus Holly Holm. Gina's out here saying she wishes that Ronda would. I would have liked to fight a striker. Something about she wanted to fight a striker, or she would have liked Ronda to strike with her, or she would have preferred a matchup against a striker. Okay, give her Holly Holm. Let's meet reality. And if she could get through Holly or survive or do well or perform, well then good for her. But I'm not sure that would go well. But I'm one of those guys. I'm like, hey, well, I'm from the show me state. So you said you want a striker. Here's a striker. Let's see. Let's see what's really going on. Who else could we get? Who else is a free agent? Well, they're talking about John Jones. I'd like to see John Jones versus Francis Ngannou. That would be crazy. Um, Hey, if we're getting real weird, John Jones versus Brock Lesnar. John Jones versus Jake Paul in boxing would be interesting. That would be fucking wild. Dude, there's so many matchups we can make. We could get Elon Musk versus Mark Zuckerberg. You know what I'm saying? That would be fucking crazy. Who else has got beef? Uh, uh, Trump versus Obama. What are we doing? We can do anything. Sky's the limit, guys. Sky's the limit in MVP, Netflix, MMA, guys. All right, yeah. So, anyway, I said I wasn't going to do a video about Brendan Schaub for 2 weeks. It was over 2 weeks. He started popping off with all this shit. I like the guy, but he's absolutely wrong on like all this shit we went over today. Joe Rogan's wrong about Theo Vaughn. And yeah, you know who else is wrong? Anybody who's not here on the live. That means you guys that are here with me right now, you guys are right. You're in the right place. You got the right mindset. You're the real ones. So, anyways, I will see you on the stream tomorrow. Make sure you got notifications on because I'm going to be going earlier and earlier. And I might not go earlier. I might go later. Right? Because my intention is to go earlier and to start popping these off at an earlier time and then drop a video in addition to the live. That's ambitious. I got a lot of shit going on. I'm covered in chlorine right now. I'm out here fucking dealing with the pool. Some shit fucking there was a windstorm. I got palm fronds in the fucking pool. It's like a whole situation, right? So, anyways, I'm gonna go hop in the shower. I love you guys. Appreciate you. And if you're real ones, get a real one shirt. Let me drop that in the chat before I bounce the fuck off this thing. Here we go. Boom, right there. Bam. All right, guys. So grab one of these real one shirts and send your coach to Studio Millions. You know how we do it. All right. I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.